Look at the colors in the sky. We're singing our song as the day goes by.
In a quiet corner of the Philippines, where the morning smelled of wet soil and the evenings glowed with soft, golden light, lived two siblings whose lives were shaped more by hope than by comfort. Liana, the older sister, carried a gentleness that calmed every storm around her. Marco, younger by 2 years, held a quiet determination that burned behind his shy smile. Their world was small, humble, and often heavy, but inside it lived a music no one had yet heard. Their home stood on the edge of a small neighborhood, its walls thin, its roof patched with whatever their father could find. Inside those walls, the siblings learned early what struggle felt like. They heard it in the way their mother sighed at night. They saw it in the way their father worked double shifts to keep food on the table. Yet every challenge only wove them closer. Music became their safe place long before they knew what dreams were. Old radios, borrowed guitars, and second-hand microphones became treasures they protected like precious gold. When the world around them felt too loud, they escaped into melodies. Liana's voice flowed soft and clear, while Marco's carried a strength that rose from deep inside him. When their voices met, something magical happened, an emotion that felt larger than the small room they stood in. They practiced in hidden corners where neighbors wouldn't complain, the damp backyard before sunrise, the rooftop when the moon was rising, the narrow hallway when it rained too hard to go outside. Every practice session felt like stitching tiny pieces of their souls into one shared dream. But dreams were fragile things in a place where survival mattered more. The siblings knew this. Still, Liana would often place a hand on Marco's shoulder, grounding him with her confidence. And Marco, though quiet, carried a spark that refused to dim. They never imagined stages or spotlights. They only imagined a single moment, where their voices might lift their family, even if just a little. In that small house, on that quiet street, the idea of joining America's Got Talent had never felt real to Liana and Marco. It was the kind of dream people in their neighborhood whispered about, the kind that lived in distant places, far beyond the reach of those who counted coins before buying rice. But sometimes, fate begins quietly, in ways no one expects. One afternoon, after a local town performance, a traveling volunteer teacher overheard their harmony. She encouraged them to audition online for AGT, insisting their voices carried something rare, something meant for the world. The siblings laughed at first, shy and unsure, but her conviction planted a seed inside them. Late that night, using a borrowed phone and a flickering light bulb, they recorded a simple duet and submitted it without expectation. Weeks passed, filled with the usual routines, work, chores, school, and the familiar weight of financial worry. Then, one morning, as sunlight spilled through the thin curtains, an email arrived. They had been selected for a live audition in Los Angeles. The world seemed to stop. Their mother covered her face with trembling hands. Their father, quiet but proud, nodded slowly, as if trying to process a miracle unfolding in real time. The siblings stood frozen, the reality too large to grasp. Preparing for the journey was another challenge. They sold old belongings, borrowed from relatives, and accepted small donations from neighbors who believed in them. This wasn't just a trip, it was a collective hope carried by an entire community. When the day came, the airport felt like another planet. Loud announcements echoed through open spaces. Bright lights reflected off glass walls. Strangers moved with confidence, while the siblings walked with wide eyes and nervous steps. But despite the fear, there was also something beautiful inside them, an unspoken courage that pushed them forward. As the plane took off, Liana looked out the window, watching the familiar landscape shrink beneath the clouds. It felt like leaving behind everything they knew, and stepping into a future they had never dared to imagine. Somewhere above the ocean, wrapped in silence and uncertainty, their story began to rise, like a song waiting to be sung. The moment Liana and Marco stepped inside the AGT building, the world seemed to stretch far beyond anything they had ever known. Bright walls, rushing staff, voices echoing across long hallways, everything felt enormous, almost unreal. It was a place built for dreams, yet it demanded courage they weren't sure they had. Backstage, they joined a crowd of performers from all corners of the world. Dancers stretched in perfect rhythm, magicians rehearsed with swift hands, singers warmed up with powerful notes that made the walls vibrate. Everywhere they looked, talent shimmered like bright stars. And in the middle of that galaxy, the siblings felt like two small lights trying to find their space. Liana held their folder of documents close to her chest, as if it were a shield. Marco walked slightly behind her, his hands cold, his breath unsteady. Their hearts beat fast, not out of fear of the judges, but from the weight of what this moment represented. It wasn't just their dream anymore, it carried the prayers of their parents, the encouragement of their community, and the quiet hope of everyone who believed in them. A staff member guided them toward a waiting area. The hum of excitement mixed with the smell of stage makeup and warm lights. Every few seconds, the heavy doors ahead opened and closed, revealing quick flashes of the stage, golden lights, cheering crowds, and a world far brighter than the small practice corners they were used to. The siblings sat close together on a bench. Marco's legs shook slightly, and Liana gently placed her hand on his. No words were spoken, yet something passed between them, a silent reminder that they had survived harder days than this. As they waited for their names to be called, memories drifted into their minds. The nights spent practicing under a weak lamp. The mornings their father woke before sunrise to work. The times their mother cried quietly, thinking no one heard. All those moments were now threads woven into the courage they carried. Then came a voice, a staff member calling them forward. The hallway leading to the stage felt endless, glowing with warm lights and muffled cheers. Each step was heavy, yet filled with purpose. When they reached the final door, the last barrier between them and the world, they paused for a heartbeat. In that pause, the fear softened. The bond between them strengthened. Together, they stepped toward the light. The stage greeted them with a light so bright it felt like stepping into another universe. For a moment, Liana and Marco stood still, letting their eyes adjust, letting their breath settle. Before them stretched an ocean of faces, curious, expectant, waiting. The judges' table glowed beneath the warm beams, and the cameras captured every tremble in their hands. The siblings exchanged one final glance, the kind that only those bound by shared struggles could understand. It wasn't a glance of fear, it was a reminder of how far they had come. From a small home with patched roofs to one of the biggest stages in the world, carrying a dream that once felt impossible. The music began softly, like a gentle whisper rising from their past. Liana's voice entered first, delicate yet filled with unspoken strength. It floated across the silent auditorium, touching every corner like a soft breeze carrying stories of home. Then Marco's voice followed, deep, warm, and steady. His tone rose from a place shaped by struggle, by late-night practices, by moments when hope felt fragile. Together, their voices intertwined, creating a harmony that felt almost sacred. It wasn't just music, it was a memory, a prayer, a promise woven into sound. The audience leaned forward, drawn by the purity of their emotion. The judges, known for their stern and fearless expressions, sat motionless, listening, absorbing the weight of each note. The siblings didn't sing with perfection, they sang with truth. Every line carried a piece of their journey, the fear of leaving home, the sacrifices of their parents, the courage to stand in places they once believed were unreachable. As the performance swelled, something in the room shifted. The melody grew stronger, braver. Liana's high notes lifted like wings, and Marco's grounding voice held them steady, creating a balance. As the last pieces of golden confetti drifted to the stage floor, the siblings stood frozen, unable to move, unable to breathe. The world around them blurred into shapes and colors, flashing lights, cheering faces, trembling hands reaching toward them. In that moment, everything felt unreal, as if they had stepped into a dream far too bright for their eyes. Backstage, the noise softened into a hum, and the golden dust still clung to their hair and clothes. Liana pressed her palms against her face, overwhelmed by the weight of emotion collapsing inside her. Marco sank onto a nearby step, his breath unsteady, his heart still racing from the shock of what had happened. They looked at each other, eyes red, hands shaking, and suddenly the reality of it all broke through. Their embrace was tight, trembling, a mixture of relief, disbelief, and gratitude. All the hard days, all the silent sacrifices, all the quiet moments of doubt had led to this one, breathtaking miracle. Outside the backstage door, the world had already begun to react. Phones buzzed with messages from home. Their parents, thousands of miles away, cried openly as neighbors gathered around a small screen to witness the moment. Social media, alive with emotion, flooded with clips of their performance, people calling it one of the most heartfelt duets AGT had ever seen. But for the siblings, the true victory wasn't fame. It was knowing that their voices had reached people, not just as sound, but as something deeper. Something human. Something meaningful. They had carried the story of their family, their struggles, and their hope across an ocean, and somehow, the world had listened. In the quiet that followed, a staff member approached with gentle smiles and warm congratulations. Producers mentioned next steps, interviews, press appearances, semi-finals, but their minds couldn't hold that yet. All they could grasp was the simple truth that their lives had changed forever. As they stepped outside the building later that night, the Los Angeles sky stretched above them, wide, open, glowing with distant stars. It felt like a reflection of their journey, once small, once hidden, now filled with endless possibility. Hand in hand, Liana and Marco walked toward their future, hearts full, voices strong. Their story was no longer just theirs. It now belonged to everyone who believed in the power of courage, hope, and a dream that refuses to die.